Thanksgiving Reckoning, a family's fragile illusion. On Thanksgiving morning, I woke up in my Boston apartment and immediately a familiar sense of unease settled in my chest. Another year, another family reunion. This time, the gathering was set at the Ocean Crest Resort, an opulent, oceanfront retreat in Newport, Rhode Island. It was our family's annual tradition, all expenses covered by my grandfather. As I did a final check of my suitcase, I let out a deep sigh, glancing at my reflection in the mirror. My name is Rachel Donovan, and I'm 34 years old. I work as a senior analyst at a biotech firm, earning $175,000 a year. I live alone in Boston, having built a solid financial foundation through careful investments and smart decisions. Money is important, but dignity is even more valuable, words my grandfather often repeated. My grandfather, Henry Donovan, is a self-made man who built his fortune in real estate. Everything I know about financial management, I learned from him. Since childhood, he instilled in me the importance of independence, smart investing, and long-term planning. He's the only one in the family who truly understands me. My sister, Caroline, is the complete opposite. She once worked as an event planner, but is now a full-time housewife. She lives what appears to be a glamorous life with her husband and their 8-year-old son, but the reality is far different. Without our grandfather's financial help, their extravagant lifestyle wouldn't exist. He covers their sky-high mortgage, car payments, and their son's private school tuition. Yet, Caroline's social media is filled with pictures of luxury, designer handbags, fine dining, exotic vacations. She's obsessed with maintaining an illusion of wealth that doesn't belong to her. My parents, Thomas and Eleanor, are no different. They present themselves as comfortably retired in a gated community in Florida, but their entire financial stability depends on my grandfather. He paid for their retirement home, their daily expenses, even their country club membership. Growing up, they were distant with me, but endlessly indulgent with Caroline. That never changed. When I was in college, I worked part-time jobs and relied on scholarships to cover tuition. Meanwhile, Caroline had everything paid for her tuition, her study abroad program, even a brand new car upon graduation. The unfairness of it all still stings. Become someone who can stand on their own feet. That was my grandfather's mantra, and I took it to heart. I built my career, invested wisely, and created a life where I don't rely on anyone's support. My apartment, with its sweeping views of the Boston skyline, is mine. I enjoy nice things, but I never live beyond my means. As I grabbed my suitcase, the familiar anxiety of Thanksgiving deepened. Every year, the cracks in our family's dynamic widened. Caroline's need to uphold appearances, my parents' favoritism, my grandfather's growing disappointment, it all seemed to be building towards something inevitable. On my way to the airport, I stared out the taxi window, lost in thought. The Ocean Crest Resort was one of the most prestigious hotels in Rhode Island, a historic estate with grand architecture and suites costing over $1,000 a night. The Thanksgiving dinner alone was priced at $250 per person. But beneath all the luxury, I knew the truth. Our family's reality was fragile. Caroline's lifestyle, my parents' retirement, it was all dependent on a single man's generosity. And this year, I had a feeling things were about to change. As I stepped out of the taxi, the crisp New England air greeted me, carrying the scent of salt from the nearby ocean. The Ocean Crest Resort stood before me, an architectural masterpiece of the Gilded Age, its grand stone facade overlooking the waves crashing against the rocky shores of Newport, Rhode Island. The Thanksgiving holiday had drawn an elite crowd, with luxury cars lining the driveway and well-dressed guests milling about the entrance. I was the last to arrive. Pulling my navy Samsonite suitcase behind me, I straightened my sleek theory dress, still slightly wrinkled from the long flight. As I entered the grand lobby, I took in the soaring chandeliers, the polished marble floors, and the distant murmur of soft conversation. Every inch of the space exuded old-money elegance, the kind my family was eager to project, but could never truly claim as their own. As I made my way toward the front desk, I spotted my parents, sitting in a quiet corner of the lobby, deep in hushed conversation. My mother, Eleanor, wore what was unmistakably a brand new resort dress, a subtle pastel print that complemented her carefully styled blonde hair. My father, Thomas, sat beside her, dressed casually in a polo and slacks, perfectly curated to match the effortless wealth they pretended to have. The moment our eyes met, they looked away. I wasn't surprised. "Miss Donovan, I'm sorry, but I can't seem to find your reservation," the front desk clerk said, frowning at the computer screen. He scrolled through the list again, his confusion growing. "I can see the reservations for your family members, but—" Before he could finish, the sharp click of high heels against the marble floor cut through the murmuring crowd. I turned just as Caroline appeared, her expression smug as she sauntered toward me. She carried a Hermes Birkin bag effortlessly on her arm, her Cartier watch gleaming under the soft glow of the lobby lights. "Oh, Rachel, you finally made it," she said, her voice dripping with mock concern. I knew this tone well. It was the same one she had used when we were children, reveling in the knowledge that she had been chosen, that she had been favored. The front desk staff continued to check their system, their fingers moving quickly across the keyboard. Nearby guests began to glance over, curiosity flickering in their eyes as they picked up on the tension. Caroline's voice grew louder, deliberate, designed to make a scene. "How strange that there's no reservation for you," she said, her carefully manicured nails tapping against the marble counter. Her Louis Vuitton suitcase stood prominently beside my practical navy one, an obvious contrast. Then, with a dramatic pause, she smirked. "Actually, I only made reservations for our family," she said smoothly, loud enough for those nearby to hear. My fingers tightened around the handle of my suitcase. "I booked a suite for myself, my husband, and my son. And of course, one for Mom and Dad." She gave me a sickly sweet smile, tilting her head slightly. "Just for the real family, you see." For a moment, everything fell silent. The front desk staff looked utterly lost for words. My parents didn't move, their backs turned even further as if pretending not to be part of this humiliation. The air around me felt cold and heavy, despite the warmth of the grand fireplace crackling nearby. I took a slow, deep breath. My expression remained neutral as I lifted my chin slightly. "I see," I said simply, my voice calm. "Then I'll leave." A flicker of surprise crossed Caroline's face. Without another glance at her, I gave a polite nod to the front desk staff and reached into my bag, pulling out my phone. With practiced ease, I opened a ride-hailing app, my fingers moving instinctively. "Wait," Caroline's voice rose slightly, but I ignored her, already making my way toward the grand entrance. As I walked, I could feel the gazes of strangers, their silent judgment, their quiet sympathy. My sister stood frozen, her triumphant expression slipping ever so slightly. My parents remained motionless, caught between discomfort and their unwillingness to intervene. The only sound in the vast, elegant lobby was the soft echo of my footsteps against the marble floor. Stepping outside, the afternoon sun was blindingly bright, the ocean breeze cool against my skin. Palm trees swayed gently, their shadows stretching long across the entrance. And yet, despite everything, a strange sense of liberation spread through me. My grandfather's words surfaced in my mind once more. Become someone who can stand on their own feet. For the first time, I truly understood them. Standing there, taking in the grandeur of the Ocean Crest Resort, I felt something unexpected relief. Because now, I was finally free. As my taxi wove through the narrow streets of Newport, luxury cars continued pulling up to the grand entrance of Ocean Crest Resort, each one carrying another well-dressed family ready to indulge in their carefully curated holiday experience. Laughter and cheerful chatter filled the crisp autumn air, blending with the warm glow of golden string lights adorning the resort's stately columns. Through the lobby's glass doors, I caught a glimpse of my 8-year-old niece, Emily, her delicate frame wrapped in an expensive cashmere coat. The deep burgundy color was elegant, far too extravagant for a child. She fidgeted beside her mother, Caroline, her gaze scanning the room as if she was searching for something. Or maybe for someone. Me. Every year, I had a Thanksgiving tradition with Emily. I always brought her a small but meaningful gift. This time, I had picked out a pearl hair clip, something understated yet classic, a touch of elegance that suited her more than the designer labels her mother obsessed over. Now, that clip sat untouched in my suitcase, still wrapped in its pristine packaging. A sharp pang hit my chest, but I pushed it aside. The moment my taxi arrived, I pulled open the door and slid inside, giving the driver a brief nod. Newport State Airport, please. As the car pulled away from the hotel, I reached for my phone and began searching for the next available flight to Boston. Thanksgiving fares were high, but the price of the ticket didn't matter. What felt truly expensive was the emotional energy I had wasted year after year for this holiday. I turned my head slightly, watching through the rearview mirror as the Ocean Crest Resort grew smaller, its pristine stone exterior gleaming under the late afternoon sun. It stood there, an immaculate illusion, much like my family, a symbol of grandeur built on a foundation of dependency, denial, and pretense. But today, the first crack had formed. There was no turning back. Inside the taxi, I finally felt a rare sense of peace. The gentle hum of the air conditioning, the smooth feel of the premium leather seats, they all worked to slowly ease the tension coiled in my shoulders. Outside, the familiar beauty of Newport passed by. The tree-lined streets, the historic mansions, the glimpses of the Atlantic sparkling beyond the cliffs. Normally, this view would captivate me. Today, it barely registered. I lifted my phone and dialed Grandfather Henry's number. The dial tone rang longer than usual before his deep, steady voice filled the line. "Rachel, what's wrong?" Though his tone remained controlled, I detected a hint of concern beneath it. I inhaled slowly, keeping my voice measured. "I have something to report," I said. And then I told him everything. The missing reservation. Caroline's words. How my parents had turned away. How I had left. I laid it all out, without embellishment, without emotion. A sharp inhale sounded from the other end of the call. I knew that sound. It was the telltale sign of Grandfather's controlled anger. Silence stretched for a beat, then another. Finally, his voice came, low and decisive. "I understand. I'll handle this from here." Those 5 words carried a weight that hinted at the storm brewing ahead. I ended the call. And then, my phone began vibrating. The first call was from Caroline. Then another. Then another. Within 15 minutes, she had called over 10 times. Her first voicemail was syrupy sweet, designed to sound like the voice of a caring sister. "Rachel, Emily was looking forward to our Thanksgiving tradition. She's so disappointed. Can't you consider a child's feelings?" Then, the tone changed. "My friends are coming for dinner tonight. Do you have any idea how humiliating this is for me?" I was planning the perfect Thanksgiving post for Instagram. The irritation in her voice grew with every message, turning into full hysteria as I continued to ignore her. Then came the emails. The first was from Mother. We could have added another room, but as Caroline said, we prioritized the real family. "You're independent now, aren't you?" The words carried the same coldness I had known my entire life. Then, my father's message arrived. "Caroline has a husband. A child. You understand that, right? Can't you just put up with it for Thanksgiving? That's always been your problem, Rachel. You only think about yourself. Never about the family." And finally, the next gut-punching email from Mother. "We had everything planned for social media. Beautiful family photos with you and Emily. It's all ruined now." A bitter laugh escaped my lips. It was never about family. It was about appearances. The image they had worked so hard to maintain. And I had ruined it. As the taxi neared the airport, another wave of messages flooded in. "Because of your selfishness, Emily is crying. She was waiting so long to see you." I exhaled slowly. The guilt they were trying to place on me had lost its power. I knew the truth now. They didn't want me there because they loved me. They wanted me there because I played a role in their carefully staged production. And for the first time in my life, I had walked away from the script. As the taxi neared Newport State Airport, my phone continued to vibrate with incoming messages. Caroline was relentless, using her daughter as a shield until the very end. "Emily is crying. She doesn't understand why you won't come back. Do you even care about her?" But beneath her words, all I saw was her vanity and pride. This wasn't about Emily. It was about Caroline's desperation to preserve the illusion she had built for herself. Not long after, my mother's sarcasm followed. Poor Caroline. If only you knew how desperate she is for Emily's future. But children's education costs money. You wouldn't understand. For the first time, I felt no urge to respond. Instead, I felt relief. They had finally revealed their true colors so clearly, there was no room left for doubt. Just before we pulled up to the terminal, my phone chimed with a new email. It was from Grandfather Henry. I'm proud of your decision. I understand everything. For a brief moment, my eyes welled up, not with sadness, but with quiet determination. This wasn't the end. This was the beginning of something new. I stepped out of the taxi, pulling my suitcase behind me as I walked toward the departure terminal. The cool breeze from the ocean followed me, crisp and refreshing. Even with the continuous flood of calls and accusatory messages. You're tearing the family apart. I had already reached a place where their words no longer held power over me. Inside the terminal, I booked my flight to Boston and found a seat near the boarding gate. An unexpected sense of freedom settled over me. This was the moment. My chance to finally break free from the false family I had been stuck in for years. About 30 minutes into the flight, my phone buzzed with a new email from Grandfather. This time, it wasn't just addressed to me. It was sent to everyone in the family. Today, on Thanksgiving, something has happened that has deeply damaged our family's dignity. The cruel treatment of Rachel is a stain on the Donovan family name and cannot be ignored. Effective immediately, I am freezing all financial support to Thomas, Eleanor, and Caroline. You must understand that your luxurious lives have only been possible because of my support. Those who have lost sight of what truly matters, who have drowned in vanity and deceit, will no longer enjoy such privileges. As I finished reading, Caroline's calls started coming in. There were so many. Her panic was clear in the frantic voicemails and texts. Rachel, please answer. Please. Convince Grandpa to change his mind. Her messages came faster. I can't lose this. You don't understand. Without Grandpa's money, I can't pay the mortgage. I can't pay Emily's school fees. Then came the emails from my parents. Their tone was completely different from before. Rachel, this is about our retirement. Please talk to Grandpa. Without his $150,000 deposit, we'll lose our luxury home. What are we supposed to do? I could see it now, how much their stability had depended on the money they received. My mother's last email was the most desperate of all. Do something. He'll listen to you. Won't he? I quietly turned off my phone, watching the vast clouds stretch endlessly outside the airplane window. The perfect Thanksgiving photos they posted every year, showing off their wealth, their happy family facade, wouldn't be shared this time. And for Caroline, that might be an even bigger blow than losing the money itself. The flight landed in Boston, and the moment I connected to Wi-Fi, my phone exploded with over 100 unread messages. Most were from Caroline, her panic growing with every word. What am I supposed to do? I can't pay the loans. What about Emily's school fees? Emails from my parents were just as frantic. We won't get our retirement home deposit back. What now? The cold reality was hitting them all at once. But what caught my attention most was another email from Grandfather. This decision is final. Any objections will result in the loss of all remaining support. It was clear and unforgiving. For them, this was a crisis. For me, it was my freedom. I set my phone down and stepped into the crisp Boston evening, inhaling deeply. For the first time in years, I felt light. I had no family obligations tying me down. No staged photos to take. No more playing the role of the forgotten daughter, the afterthought, the one they expected to simply endure their treatment in silence. I was finally free. I set my phone down and made a cup of tea in the small kitchen of my Boston apartment. The night outside was calm, the glow of the city skyline stretching endlessly beyond my window. Normally, by now, I would have been sitting at an overpriced $250 Thanksgiving dinner at Ocean Crest Resort, picking at a meal that was more about appearances than tradition. Instead, I stood in my cozy kitchen, letting the warmth of the tea seep into my hands. I reached for a lemon from the fridge, slicing it neatly before dropping it into my cup. The tart citrus scent filled the air, a quiet contrast to the storm of unread messages on my phone. My sister's family had likely gone ahead with their annual tradition, posting carefully staged photos of their luxurious meal on social media, pretending everything was perfect. But I knew the truth. They could barely afford their credit card bills. The next call came, not from Caroline, but from her husband. His voice was tight with stress, his usual charm replaced with something much less polished. "Rachel," he exhaled, almost relieved that I answered. "Listen, I know things have been tense, but..." He hesitated. "Caroline's spending, it's out of control. She doesn't seem to understand that the money is gone. She thinks your grandfather will change his mind." A long pause. "This isn't sustainable," he finally admitted. Cracks were forming. Not just in Caroline's finances, but in her marriage too. Not long after, more messages from my parents flooded in. They were pleading for help with their retirement home deposit and medical insurance. Their tone had shifted from cold indifference to something bordering on desperation. They blamed me, as if they had learned nothing. I took another sip of tea, feeling the warmth spread through me. The guilt they were trying to impose didn't work anymore. Tomorrow, I would return to work as usual. There was new research data to analyze at the biotech company, where I earned a steady $175,000 a year. I had built my career and financial stability on my own efforts, carefully investing and living within my means. Through the window, the city lights of Boston twinkled like distant stars. I thought about my own credit card statement, always paid in full. No debts. No financial anxiety. Grandfather's words came back to me. Vanity is for others. Savings are for yourself. I had chosen the right path. And for the first time, I felt that truth deep in my bones. Boston had received its first snowfall of the season, coating the streets in a pristine layer of white. Life went on as usual for me. I spent my days at the lab, working on new projects, and my evenings reviewing my investments, ensuring my future remained secure. Meanwhile, my family situation had changed drastically. I noticed it first on social media. Caroline's once lavish Instagram posts, filled with designer bags, fine dining, and vacation snapshots, had stopped. The last update was from the day before Thanksgiving, a photo of her Louis Vuitton clutch on a candlelit restaurant table. The comments about her wonderful life now felt painfully ironic. Then came the emails from my father. For the first time ever, they were filled with real regret. "I've been reflecting on our years of living extravagantly. We spoiled Caroline too much. And we treated you coldly. I'm sorry." My mother's messages followed the same pattern. Now that their medical insurance subsidies had been cut off, they were truly feeling the consequences of their dependence on grandfather's wealth. "We finally understand just how extravagant our lives have been." Caroline's situation, however, was even worse than I imagined. One evening, I received an unexpected call, again, from her husband. His voice was shaken. "I found hidden debts, Rachel." A pause. "The credit card bills are out of control." She never told me how much she was really spending. I thought we were fine, but he let out a bitter laugh. "We can't keep living like this." He sounded tired. Resigned. "We're looking at moving into a smaller house. Public school for Emily." I imagined my sister crying herself to sleep each night, refusing to accept the reality she had spent so many years avoiding. Her husband? He was done. The marriage was falling apart along with their finances. I arrived at work at 8 a.m., left by 6 p.m., and spent my weekends reviewing my investments, attending finance study groups, and continuing to live within my means. Just yesterday, I was promoted to team leader on a new research project, one that came with a salary increase and new opportunities. My investments were growing steadily. My future was secure. Vanity brings temporary satisfaction, but savings bring lasting peace of mind. I could feel the weight of grandfather's words more than ever now. While my parents worried about their retirement and security and Caroline struggled with the consequences of her debts, I was simply continuing my ordinary life. The daily flood of messages had slowed. At first, they had bombarded me daily, desperate to convince me to fix their problems. Now, it had dwindled down to once a week, and the tone had shifted yet again. From anger, to pleading, to something almost like respect. For the first time, they were realizing something they had refused to see for years. I had built my life on my own terms, and I didn't need them. But they had always needed me. Accepting that Emily would now be transferring to public school, my sister Caroline finally seemed to be coming to terms with reality. "She'll take the bus," she wrote in a short email, her usual condescending tone replaced with something almost defeated. The dream life she once flaunted on social media, the designer outfits, the luxury vacations, the extravagant parties, would never be shared again. Meanwhile, my parents had begun downsizing, moving from their once lavish Florida gated community to a modest condo. The high cost of medical bills had stripped away their illusions of a carefree, luxurious retirement. My father's latest email reflected this shift. "We've been living with the wrong values for years." But whether this realization would lead to the restoration of genuine family bonds, I still wasn't sure. One morning, I received a short email from Grandfather Henry. "Awakening to the truth of life sometimes brings pain, but it is necessary pain. Your decision gave them an important lesson." I didn't reply. I simply saved the email quietly, as if tucking away a piece of wisdom for later reflection. The first signs of spring began to show in Boston. For me, life had not changed much, or maybe it had become even more fulfilling. The new research project I had taken on at my biotech company was progressing well, and just last week, I received news of another promotion. I was now officially a research director. My salary had increased to $200,000, and my investment portfolio was growing steadily. From my office window, I could see the vast surface of Boston Harbor, its deep blue waters sparkling under the spring sunlight. A quiet symbol of hope. Hope that my family would learn. Hope that I had chosen the right path. Work had become one of the most fulfilling parts of my life, a place where effort led to tangible rewards, where stability wasn't built on someone else's generosity, but on my own hard work. One day, an unexpected package arrived at my apartment. Inside was a simple pearl necklace, elegant, understated. Tucked alongside it was a small card with a handwritten note. "True brilliance dwells in those who stand on their own feet." A warmth spread through my chest as I ran my fingers over the smooth pearls. It wasn't about the gift itself. It was about the message behind it. Grandfather understood me in a way that my parents and sister never had. And I had proven to him that I understood his teachings as well. Over time, my contact with my parents remained minimal. They had finally accepted that their days of excess were over. They had sold their luxury home and moved into a smaller, more affordable condo. In one of my mother's rare emails, she admitted something I never thought I'd hear from her. Luxury brings only momentary joy, while security comes from a grounded lifestyle. Perhaps, for the first time, she truly understood. Caroline's family had also moved to a modest suburban neighborhood. Emily was adjusting to her new school and taking the bus like any other child. But the biggest change was in Caroline herself. Her once vibrant social media, filled with images of designer bags, exclusive vacations, and high society events, had gone silent. Her online persona had disappeared, leaving behind only a reminder of the emptiness of living for appearances. In a rare email, she admitted how difficult life had become. Her marriage was still struggling, but at least she and her husband were no longer living in denial. Perhaps that was the first step toward something real. As for me, I had started setting new goals. I wanted to lead my own research team to push the boundaries of biotechnology and medicine. I wanted to mentor younger researchers, passing down the same lessons in hard work and resilience that my grandfather had taught me, not just about money, but about life itself. During my free time, I attended investment and economic study groups. The people I met there were practical, self-sufficient, and wise. Conversations were refreshing, rooted in truth, not pretense. These were the kinds of connections I valued now. The Thanksgiving incident had been painful, but it had also been a lesson. For every member of my family, it had taught us the value of financial independence, the emptiness of a pretentious lifestyle, And above all, the true meaning of family, that it wasn't about appearances, but about real bonds formed through respect and resilience. Grandfather's final words in his email still echoed in my heart. Real bonds can only be born after overcoming hardship. In my desk drawer, the pearl hair clip I had bought for Emily still sat, beautifully wrapped. Someday, when she was old enough to understand, I would give it to her. Not because of tradition, not because of guilt, but because I wanted her to truly understand its meaning. That real worth isn't found in designer labels. That strength comes from standing on your own 2 feet. That life isn't about the illusion of success. It's about the foundation you build for yourself. And when the time was right, I hoped she would embrace that truth. Outside my window, the early spring winds rustled through the streets, shaking the bare branches of the trees, signaling the arrival of a new season. A season of growth, a season of change, a season of freedom. I want to hear from you. If you've made it this far, then you've walked alongside me on this journey, a journey of standing up for myself, walking away from toxic family dynamics, and choosing independence over illusion. But now, I turn to you. Have you ever had to make a difficult choice that set you apart from what was expected? Have you ever had to walk away from something, even family, to protect your peace and build a life on your own terms? Tell me your thoughts in the comments. What would you have done in my situation? Do you think my decision was right? Or do you believe family obligations should always come first, no matter the cost? I also welcome your advice. What lessons have you learned about financial independence, self-respect, and letting go of toxic relationships? If you've ever been in a situation where you had to break free from expectations to create a better life for yourself, I'd love to hear how you handled it. Your words might just be the encouragement someone else needs to take that first step toward their own freedom. And if you've ever felt trapped by the expectations of others, whether it's family, friends, or society, I want you to take something from my story. You are not obligated to set yourself on fire to keep others warm. Your success, your happiness, and your security should never be sacrificed for the sake of appearances. So let's talk. Let's build a conversation. Let's create a space where honesty, growth, and self-respect are valued above pretense. Drop a comment below, share your thoughts, and let's support one another in the pursuit of real, lasting freedom.